everyone. We'll now proceed to questions. It occurs to me that I should have asked these brilliant students to come up with a question for me this morning, but tomorrow you can critique the questions I ask and submit a question after the fact. Mr. Avenina, in your written statement, you say, in the PRC, there does not exist a bifurcation between government, military, and the private sector. In that vein, do you think it's fair to say that there is no such thing as a truly private company in China?
Chairman, that's correct. And in my experience in the intelligence community the last decade, I have not seen an example of a private company that is either not owned, operated, or influenced by the Communist Party of China.
So what then are the implications for our export control regime? To date, we kind of have a whack-a-mole strategy that's focused on an entity-by-entity listing as opposed to a more comprehensive or a countrywide restriction. Is it time to change our export control regime to restrict the export of certain technologies to the entire PRC, regardless of whether the company in question claims to be private?
Well, I think it's a combination of both understanding the threat, understanding just the mosaic for which we look at this aspect in China compared to the way we do things in the United States. I think with the private sector, compliance, treasury, commerce, have to look at it the way the Chinese look at it. It's not just as easy to say we're going to blacklist or whitelist or export control X or Y. It's what is the underlying intent of the Communist Party in China behind that industry or technology they're trying to sell here to the U.S.
Mr. Wolf, as a longtime venture capitalist, you understand the importance of capital in building and scaling advanced technologies. Do you believe PRC industries that directly contribute to the development of technologies for the People's Liberation Army should have access to U.S. capital and our capital markets?
No, I don't. It's one thing to think about the Belt and Road Initiative. It's another thing if you're handing somebody the belt to tie around your neck.
You made a comment in passing about short-term DoD funding. Could you elaborate on that and what we might do to make DoD both a better customer and a better leader in this technological space?
We, on the venture capital side at Lux and many of our peer firms, are trying to do our part to provide the private capital so that we can take the risks on emerging startups. There are companies like Anduril that are all defense-focused, and Saildrone and Primer that touch every aspect, air, land, sea, space, subsea. The important thing is being able to make sure that the funding is there to support the long-term horizons of these companies. Venture capital firms typically are 10 years in duration, and we're able to make a decade-long bet knowing that we're going to take a shot and we're not sure if it's going to hit the rim or be an air ball or be a three-pointer for a very long period of time. Government has to parry with us and do the same. Long-term funding, long-term investment in science produces long-term results.
And to go back to the question about investing in Chinese technology companies that have PLA affiliations, what do you think your colleagues in the VC space that continue to invest in such companies, I mean, what are they missing that you seem to understand?
I actually think that the work that your committee is doing is starting to put a spotlight, and that spotlight might be partially shame, but I think it's also just putting some sunlight on the issue. People that might have invested a decade ago in China might have been doing it under a reasonable inducement or belief that this was an economy that was growing, that technology would do like it's done in the rest of the world, produce more democracy and freedom and choice and options for people to express their creativity and genius. It's been very clear over the past few years that it's the antithesis of that these have become tools of suppression and surveillance and government capture, as was well elucidated. So I think that the people that made these investments some time ago probably did it with good intent, and now you're in illiquid investments that they're stuck in, and they have to make the reputational concerns about what they do in the future, and they've got to figure out how do they not lose their own investors' money by getting out now. Anybody that's making new investments, I think, is making a massive mistake.
Well, your belt comment evinces, I don't know if it was deliberate, the old Soviet phrase that when it comes time, the capitalists will compete for the contract for the rope with which they'll hang themselves. So. It's a very vivid metaphor. Quickly, Mr. Avenina, in your testimony, you said Ford's recent deal with cattle creates a critical supply chain dependency on the CCP. If this deal goes through, what are some of the implications to the broader EV market if Ford continues with its deal with cattle?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the cattle deal with Ford is not only, as you mentioned, problematic in its own right, but I think it's also a disincentive to entrepreneurs and organizations who want to invest in their own ideation, manufacturing, or promulgation of EV battery capabilities, when it's just going to be so much cheaper to jump on to the Ford contract with cattle. And I think Ford was a capitulation to the easy way out of the EV market.
Thank you. With that, I recognize the ranking member for 5 minutes.